Grog.
Hello and welcome to the Cidership podcast. I'm Peter Fickling, and this week it's just me and Matthew Weir. Keri's basting and roasting herself in a Spanish sun for a fortnight. Matthew, how the devil are you?
I'm good, Peter. I'm back from my little trip down south to Algarve and Lisbon, which was fun. I did take the liberty of posting a little video up to the Cider Shed podcast Facebook group of the beach I was on, which just got a lot of hate.
Hate, jealousy because of your sweet blood?
Yeah, kind of. They're a begrudging bunch, but I understand. It wasn't meant. I was fishing a little bit. Also, one thing I wanted to say. Now, when you were off, me and Keri described you as outstanding and praised your camping skills.
Yeah.
When Keri was off, we praised her incredible memory and her great raising of her kids.
Quite rightly, yes, absolutely. Yeah.
And when I'm off, let me just check my notes. You described me as a strange, translucent fish that had been dragged up from the depths of the sea.
Yeah, well, it was evidence-based commentary. And I think we did say some nice stuff in between the sort of rather personal sort of descriptions about your, pasty body.
I am pale, but I will say that the sand in the background of that picture was golden, and that sand looks white in that picture as well.
Yeah,
so
I've heard rumours there was a lot of glare in that photo.
There was a bit of glare, yeah. And I don't know. Did I put the little star over my nipples? I think you didn't open it, did you? You didn't.
No.
You resisted.
Well, the good news is there's so little going on in the Archers this week that we could just spend half an hour doing a kind of a sort of Homerian ode to your greatness, your many fine qualities, your luxury, your flowing locks, your chiseled jawline, your fine wit, your way with words, etc., etc.
Keep going. Well, I tell you what, I will say. I didn't get round to listening to the Archers until the omnibus, and then I listened to you guys afterwards on Sunday.
Was that just because you were on holiday, or was it because you heard rumours?
No, I was picking up things. I mean, I think you and Keri both messaged me, didn't you, during the week to say, it's a bit random. And then I could see things going on Twitter. And then I just decided, I'm going to listen to the pod, but it needs to make sense. So I'm going to listen to the omnibus first. And oh my God, on the basis of last week and now this week, like I go away for a week. What have they done to the Archers? Like they've broken it.
I mean, the thing about doing an Archers podcast, every now and again you feel like there's maybe a little bit too much Ambridge in your life. And then, like you've taken some time off, Keri's taken some time off, and it does feel like a kind of necessary palate cleanser, but you still listen to the show, and it's actually quite enjoyable to listen to the Archers without the pressure of having to turn up and do the recording and all that sort of stuff, which obviously is a very pleasurable hobby, but it does sort of skew things a bit. But this last week, it felt like I begrudged listening to it, and now I begrudge the need to talk about it.
Well, I did a second time around this week. I didn't listen to anything till today because I was still kind of on holiday mode. And then when I did the second time around, just to be a bit more, to scrutinize a bit more and make notes, I got through it and I missed out like Tuesday or Wednesday's episode and didn't even notice because it didn't. And then I was like, hang on, there's 5 episodes a week now. So I had to jump back. So yeah, it's been a right old hodgepodge. I would say, should we advocate the return to 4 episodes a week?
Yeah, well, it felt like the same episode 4 times, 5 times this week. Yes, Jakob's a bit of a dick and let us count the ways. You had, the stuff between Tracy. Basically, they should have just expanded the Tracy and Jazza stuff. That was vaguely tolerable, although it was enjoying them talking about something I didn't care about at all. So that dog, what was it called, Nonce or something? I can't remember.
Moose, the loose moose.
Yeah. And then the Justin Lillian thing, I never expected to hate a scene with Lillian that much.
It was, the whole thing was quite, how could I say this, socially and economically tone deaf. We're at the arse end or the arse beginning of a pandemic. Everyone's feeling the pinch. Well, a lot of people are. And, are we relating to these empty nesters who've got loads of disposable income from selling the barn? How much did they get for the barn, by the way?
I think it was hundreds of thousands, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I sad as it is, I went on and actually Googled barns for sale in the Cotswolds to get a rough idea, and like you can find them around for about 750 grand. Yeah, because Double Bill, the horse, was in the hundreds of thousands.
Yeah, and also he was thinking about starting up a yacht racing team. So that's just ridiculous. Anyway, should we try not to be hypocrites? Should we try and add some vague structure to our dismantling of an absolutely shambolic and kind of loose week?
Absolutely.
My notes were sailing, dogging, horsing around, and Jakob the. So
yes, Jakob the. I mean, funnily enough, there was that thing flying around on Twitter today. Did you see it about what words were not approved of using on the Beeb or on TV? I think it was in the 80s. Did you see that?
Yeah.
So you couldn't say, as it said, as a rule, no way, you can't say wank, spunk, and Jesus Christ for some reason.
So thank you, Matthew. We did discuss earlier on today whether it was my editing duties or yours tomorrow, and it's mine, and that's an extra 5 minutes of my life down the toilet.
Sorry, Peter.
That's all right. It's worth it. So yeah, what was it again?
Wank, spunk, Jesus Christ. But you can say bugger, bastard, bloody, sod, bollocks, bleeding prat, dickhead, prick, oh God, and Jesus. So funnily enough, you can't say Jesus Christ, but you can, this is filed under if you absolutely have to, you can say Jesus.
Right, okay. Well, that's good to know. I'm going to have to come up with my own kind of like BBC guidance set of rules. I might have to sort of send them around to you and Keri later. It's kind of like, you'll be able to just follow the beeping tomorrow.
Oh, I mean, for goodness sake. I mean, we actually hooked up online at about 8 o'clock, but I mean, it was a whole other show before we pressed record, wasn't it? We got all the libelous stuff out of the way.
Yeah,
things that we can't be sued now for all of the stuff that we said before.
Half an hour of terrible stag do's.
Yes.
Let's tick it off one by one then. So we start. So sailing, dogging, horsing around, and Jakob. So the sailing. Right. The first thing about that was that, like you said, one, it's wildly offensive. The inappropriateness of it all. Also, the inconsistency of Justin's wealth. Like, so they'll have these kind of petty grievances about money knocking around Ambridge, and they'll also be arguing about kind of, I'm inventing this now, but kind of, I don't know, like veterinary bills for Ruby or something. And then all of a sudden, Justin's kind of whimsically talking about whether he's going to sail to the other side of the world or start up a racing team. And it's just, I've said this before, I think he's supposed to be Barclays Brothers rich, isn't he?
Yeah, I think so. Why is it burning a hole in his pocket so much? That's what I don't get. And this idea that at the end of tonight's episode, Lillian's there saying, maybe we could sponsor a hockey team. It's very strange. So I presumably...
Hockey. She meant to say hockey. Maybe we could sponsor hockey. I mean, this is the kind, that's the kind of money they're talking about.
Yeah, I think this idea, we're meant to see this money they got from the barn as like loose change, aren't we? That he just wants to,
I mean, I guess what would be an equivalent amount for us? I mean, we talking, it'd be like £1,000 for us, wouldn't it? That's sort of like, it's kind of like, well, it's enough money. No, because I'd still want to do something responsible with £1,000.
I mean, I got, the last time I was handed like about 1,000, I went and bought a Nikon camera, a decent camera that I wanted. So maybe it's the equivalent of that, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I would, they're on about a ski lodge. They were going to do the whole ski lodge thing, a corporate box at Felpersham City.
I actually quite like the idea of that. That could have been that could have dragged in a whole load of interesting plot lines.
Yeah, I would love a kind of a local grassroots football team storyline. That would be good.
A day in the box gets put up as a prize at the fete. Eddie wins it. Insert shenanigans and hilarity.
Yeah, and I also like the idea of Justin ended up becoming a major stakeholder in Felpersham City and kind of becoming this Daniel Levy type figure in Borsetshire. I would quite like that as well.
Yeah, Justin decides to go down to the change room at half time to give the lads a bit of a G up, and ends up being pinned against the wall by a kind of uncompromising Roy Keane-esque sort of captain.
Yeah, I mean, are they leading us anywhere with this? Because Justin, okay.
Sorry to interrupt, Matthew, but I hadn't even considered they might be.
Well, this is the thing, though, isn't it? Because I felt that this whole trip to the Isle of Wight was a vehicle for Justin to discover something funny about Lillian's past, so that then she could throw the daffodil photo back in his face. So they would this whole round trip for them just to do that. But there was that moment where he was with Tony in the workshop, and he started getting very interested in miniature railways, and he was thinking about the business side of that, and that never went anywhere. I'm sure there was another thing that escapes me now that he was pondering as well as a business interest.
Purple velour jumpsuits.
Maybe, yeah, those onesies that they had on lockdown. But yeah, I just don't. It just doesn't chime with me at all. Like these very rich people in, I guess, what are we saying? Lillian and Justin are in their 60s, early 70s. I'm going to get pelters for this, aren't I? Because I said that Roy was in his early 50s and he's actually 42. So Roy, who's out there being a serial shagger on the internet, is younger than you and I, Peter.
Oh, well, I mean, this is the problem. It's how they're written, isn't it? I mean, they have, I think the youngest writer on the Archers is that a woman they added maybe a month or two ago.
Mm-hmm.
She's written some good episodes. She's a good writer, but I think she's in her early 30s. So she's their, kind of like voice of the youth.
This Lillian and Justin storyline felt like it was bloody written by Rees Mogg and Marie Antoinette while they were staying over at Chipping Norton in the Cotswolds. It was just so out of touch, I thought.
The thing is, imagine if you listened to an alternative version where the joke, the hilarious story that was hanging over Lillian was actually genuinely hilarious, and the scripting and acting for her sort of like frenemy from years gone by was amazing and on point. It could have you could sort of put aside the kind of the slightly clanging nature of how the rich spend their money compared to the rest of us, but it was all awful. And I think that's the point, isn't it? Like, if it was entertaining, we would have forgiven a lot.
Yeah, she was just another Lillian as well, wasn't she? I don't mean to kind of put characters down particularly, but it was just a slightly more one-upmanship version of Lillian. I felt, all the cliches were there.
She was awful. I mean, I always heard that repeated use of the word "hun."
Yes,
got very irritating very, very quickly, and I kind of it reminded me of when I spoiled The Usual Suspects for myself, where I was starting to kind of watch the scripting rather than enjoy the performance. So I was just kind of like, oh, another hun. Okay, was that an improvised one? Is this something the actress has added? Is this, surely it can't be in the script? No one could write the script like this. It's just too terrible.
Yeah, I mean, it's the difference between what people would type and what people would say, isn't it? Hun was very popular on the internet about 10, 15 years ago, but I don't think anyone ever asks somebody, "Are you okay, hun?" unless they're doing it completely as a joke. I don't think people actually use that term, but I might be wrong.
Well, I'm happy. This is the thing. It's like every now and again, someone will sort of talk to me about the charts. About they'll be like, "Oh, have you heard what's top of the charts? Or what's in the charts?" Or something. I'm very happily at that age now where it's a complete irrelevance. They might as well be talking about, I don't know, pigeon population of Jupiter or something. It's it's completely inconsequential to me. And so how often people say hun, or like this new trend of everyone's like big lads or beefy lads or big boys. If you watch YouTube videos, everyone's banging on about boys or lads all the time. Anyway, sorry, now I really am making myself sound like a granddad. But yeah, it's all gone. It means nothing to me.
Yeah, I'm lost with. I mean, Radio 1. That's just something else that exists in the ether. I have no knowledge of what goes on Radio 1 anymore.
I'm quite looking forward to sort of going through my kind of renaissance when my son reaches a certain age, when no doubt I'll suddenly be like, "Oh God, this is quite good. Is this in a hit parade?" It's like, "Oh yes, this has got a good beat, hasn't it?" I'll be. I'm quite looking forward to that. Oh no, put that one on again. Oh, but maybe we could buy the whole album.
You can, yes.
You can get a compact disc.
And and Cyrus is going to go, "What is an album? What are you talking about?"
Exactly.
You'll have to get Cyrus to make you go down to Dixon's and get some TDK C90s and make you some mix cassettes.
I would love to go to Dixon's and but that might be. I watch a YouTube video which is all kind of retro audio stuff, And that would be lovely, just like a kind of time machine, like a Tandies, like a proper 1980s Tandies. You've got to walk into there and go into CB radio.
I'm going to tell you something now, which I probably shouldn't. I won't mention the name. I had a colleague in Ireland who's our age, Peter. And I don't know if you remember, but in the late 80s, the Amiga computer and the Atari ST, they were the aristocracy of gaming computers.
I knew people with them.
Yeah, and as a treat, his parents took him down to an electrical store in Dublin. I don't know which one it was. And he had to choose between the two, the Amiga and the ST. And the helpful guy that was working there, the sales assistant, said to him, well, the Amiga comes with a mouse. And my friend's mum said, but we've got a cat.
That just sounds like a terrible, terrible old joke.
No, it happened, unless he was making it up when he told me. He said that his mum actually believed it was a cat.
You will hear that joke in the Archers within the next couple of weeks if they keep their current form going up. As a joke, written as a joke, not as a true story.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, what did we have with little Moose? I mean, Moose was basically cock blocking Jazzer, wasn't he?
Jazzer seemed more concerned with having his bachelor pad dismantled. That seemed his big sort of concern, didn't it? He wanted to keep his kind of, he wanted to keep his black wallpaper up and his kind of big posters of Thin Lizzy, and
you're making his bedroom sound like Roy Keane's when he was a trainee at Nottingham Forest. Apparently, he went up and painted his entire room black and just sat in there. And Brian Clough insisted on him redecorating it.
Brian Clough, I feel like I adored Brian Clough when I was younger. But the older I get, the more and more I sort of feel like it's probably best that he did what he did when he did it. Like, if he was around today, I think he would, he would be very quickly and quite rightly run out the game. Some of his tactics were really quite odd.
Yeah, I have fears for things like, if Brian Clough was here now, I feel like he might be like full on UKIP or something like that. It's the same way, like, I'm kind of glad Hitchens isn't around anymore, because I've had this horrible fear that he might have gone libertarian and just, Joe Rogan style nightmare. Sorry, I know Joe Rogan is a particular lightning rod for you.
We should steer away now, because if it'd be like if you and I sort of actually committed to a conversation about Highlander, we'd be gone in a wormhole for 3 hours.
Yeah. Let's divert before I start doing Jordan Peterson impressions.
So Jazzer doesn't have Brian Clough. He has Tracy to make decisions about how he should live his life.
She wanted to take down his curtains, didn't she?
But I think she's wanted to give a bit of a scrub and a clean. But I think what it might be building to is more the idea that Jazzer is loving being with Tracy, but is going to sort of struggle slightly, but sort of ultimately will fold in his transition from, arrested development to proper adulthood.
Yeah, he just wants to sit on the Mouldy Sun lounger, doesn't he? He seems to be, and they were really lovely this week, didn't you think? There was no, because it's been a long time since we heard from Tracy, and Jazzer interacting together, and I just felt it was. Well, did we hear from them last week? Actually, am I being an idiot?
I think you're mistaking Jackie Weaver for Jazzer.
Maybe, yeah. Well, there was the whole thing with Russ came round to coach Chelsea to give her a bit of tutoring.
Yeah,
it was just nice because they weren't arguing. Because I felt that they had this, Keri particularly as well is not happy with how much. What's the word? What's the adjective Keri used? It wasn't eggy, was it? It was something. Eggy is very Bristol. If you want to say that someone's being in a bad mood, or
that was that my part of the West Country. Eggy was a go-to as well.
Did you have head Benny? When someone loses it.
Benny, yes.
He had a right Benny, a right head Benny.
Benny, yes, not a head Benny though.
But I had friends from. I had a friend who came to a flatmate from Devizes, and I asked her. I had to explain head Benny to her once, and she went, "Oh, a Reggie." It's like, okay, all right, whatever.
I do. At a time when I occasionally struggle with my patriotism or trying to find any, I don't, like the richness of our kind of our language. The number of different regional dialects is pretty impressive. It's quite dense, isn't it? You go over
Yeah.
go over another rolling set of hills, and there it is, another accent, another.
So if I was to describe something as Mackie, would you know what I meant?
No clue, not a clue.
Okay, which means very very big.
Oh, okay. We had Tracy and Jazza being incredibly warm and affectionate with each other, and it was sort of a mixture of brilliant acting and some very kind of on point scripting. They'd sort of segued into some slight nicknames for each other. So he's now Jazz and she's Trace, which I don't think they were before. And so it just showed, it was like a sort of a perfect counterpoint to all the criticisms I made about Justin and Lillian and that awful Hun woman. So yeah, it was that the only positive we could take away from this week? Maybe a little bit of affection and fondness towards Alistair.
Yeah, happy to see Jazz and Trace blossom rather than argue. Alistair and Jakob were causing me quite a lot of distress when they were in scenes together, because for me they almost sound on the same register in terms of their voice. It's like listening to someone. It's like Norman Bates in Psycho. I feel like I'm listening to the same person.
Oh, really?
Talking to each other. Yeah, strange, isn't it? I know that some people obviously can tell them apart, but I can just about do it. But there was a point where Jakob was saying something. Jakob was the one that suggested Denise took the dog, Moose, at the end, right?
Yeah.
And for the most part of that, until Alistair came in, I thought it was Alistair saying that. It was really confusing me.
Now you mention it, I can see how someone would sort of find them confusable, but there's no confusion for me at all. I think maybe it's that last scene maybe would be the difference, but it's very easy, isn't it? If you want to punch him, it's Jakob, and if you don't want to punch him, it's Alistair.
Yeah, I mean, they really ramped up his just totally obnoxious behaviour. You wouldn't speak to somebody like that. I mean, I don't know. I've worked in countries with different standards of what's acceptable and what isn't, and I think in Portugal, actually, a lot of things are let go, like bosses screaming, not necessarily at staff, but in front of staff, etc. But I think in terms of like in Australia, if you spoke to somebody like that, you'd end up in bloody court.
Yeah, there's. I was thinking about. I mean, I'm not going to try and get myself into hot water by trying to make any kind of stupid pseudo diagnosis or anything. But there is a very nice young man who works at a place I take my son near here, and he obviously has some kind of condition. Again, but the thing is, his problem is he obviously finds it very difficult to see nuance and extra meanings or second meanings or sarcasms or kind of like jokes, like what. So yeah, that's the best way I can describe it. He's very literal when he talks to you, but you can see the patience with which he approaches the world. Like he's very careful to sort of listen to you, and you can see him working hard to try and find meaning in what you say and try and fit in with how you do things. And if someone, and that's been my experience all the way through life, is that people who have those kind of social awkwardnesses, they tend to be the people who are they're sensitive to a fault. They're always trying to make that effort. It just seems implausible to me that someone who's so dedicated to being good at their job wouldn't, as Jakob famously is, wouldn't recognize that even though he finds it difficult and tiresome, he has to jump through these hoops. This is he has to listen to tedious chat about people's children. He has to talk to accept that some people don't have the perfect storeroom management. Do you think that's a fair comparison, or am I being a bit nutty?
No, I think you're on the money there. I mean, one thing that I thought of since his introduction to the show, I mean, he was real blood from a stone material, wasn't he? At first, Alistair trying to have the bants with him at work, and he just nothing. Yes, no, monosyllabic answers. I did think for a while that it was just very lazy writing, in the sense that like the name Yakov is derived from Scandinavia, isn't it? And the Scandinavian stereotype is that they are very straight and very methodical, but like Jakob is.
But polite to a fault. There's actually
Absolutely.
What's the word they have for it in Sweden? It's a kind of it's a sort of a national. It's kind of national spirit, and it's all based around humility and kind of like sort of not genuflection is the wrong word, but sort of like extreme humility. That's the whole point.
Yeah, I felt that maybe they were trying to kind of very clumsily make him that kind of character when he first came into it. But I mean, he is generally the only time I remember any kind of warmth from Jakob was when whose baby was it he got to stop crying when they were around for dinner? Him and Kate. Do you remember? When
Oh,
he picked up the baby and the baby just immediately started cooing. And they're like, "Oh, you're a natural." And then Kate thought she was pregnant. Do you remember that?
oh, I
And
do
that
remember.
was
I do remember the pregnancy. Now you say it.
Keri very kindly posted on Twitter. Well, why didn't she go to a doctor? Who told you? Who told her she was pregnant? A tree?
Keri's a very sensitive woman. We haven't done. I mean, did Keri get enough praise last time? Are we supposed to? I don't know how it works now. You made me feel oversensitive from the beginning when you told me off for not praising you. Are we supposed
praising absent friends?
do we always have to praise? Do we always have to praise absent friends, or can we?
No. I mean, we know Keri's wonderful. I mean, she messaged us last night, didn't she? Kind of an emergency thing. Can someone take over the Cider Shed Twitter because I've just ordered a second drink, and I stood up to the plate and then promptly treated that plate like it was at a Greek wedding and smashed it on the floor and totally forgot.
Yeah, Keri does a fine job with the Twitters, but well, you know, she's much missed. This is the kind of week when it really does help to have three people, because you know we're. I mean, it's not, the thing is that I was thinking about this earlier on. I was like, well, I have been criticised in the past for being overly negative about the Archers, and my response to that would be, when there's something nice to say, I say it. I say nice things, and I say it with, you know, as passionately and as enthusiastically as I do, you know, like listen to me waffle on about Emma or about Vince or about the lovely Jim or any one of these characters who I absolutely adore. But if you're given a week like this, what are you supposed to do except moan? I mean, I've tried to say some positive stuff about Alistair and Jazza and Tracy.
I think we sit comfortably in the middle because particularly on Facebook, as a result of the reach of the podcast, I've joined quite a few of those Archers groups, and there's a split, right? You either have people who are fanatical about the Archers to the extent where they won't hear any criticism of it whatsoever,
which is mental.
You have people who seem to be completely and utterly enraged by the state of every single episode and every single storyline. So you get this chorus of who's, boos and hisses, or who's, criticizing the show. And I think we're just nicely nestled in the middle, aren't we? We're just there saying, yeah, it's not infallible. Like we get it. It's a radio soap. Sometimes it goes off. Sometimes they don't have the right storyline. And I just think it's totally healthy to be able to sit in the middle and say, yeah, not great, not terrible either, you know?
If I'd been in my sort of pre-podcast era, then I would have probably maybe taken a couple of weeks off, which I have done in, you know, years gone by. I've sort of drifted away for a month or two. And I think this week and last week would have been enough for me to have one of my little hiatuses.
I mean, you saying that you don't know what the types of wood that were on the second yacht that Justin and Lillian went to see were?
I can take a guess. I know teak was one of them.
Teak was one, yeah.
Rosewood was the other one, maybe.
Light oak.
Yeah. But here's the thing. I'm enough of a geek, and you know, not a geek, a kind of like an information whore. I just love knowing about everything. Like, you know, that's probably, you know, I don't have a good brain, but it's got a great big buckety brain. Like, it stores a lot of stuff. And you know, that I would have loved to have heard some sort of stuff about sailing, like, you know, all the different rigging, and actually they sort of got into it. And instead we had that, just the world's least plausible. Do you think you could do better at writing a kind of off-mic funny story that kind of fades back in? I acknowledge that it must be a very difficult thing to do, where it, you know, you cut from the vet surgery, you're downing cows, and there's Lillian, and there's Justin going, and then you thought it was a walrus. I mean, I get that's a really difficult thing to do, but it just wasn't funny at any level, and or for any of the retellings.
I'm glad you're saying all this, Peter, because I was about to ask you, what happened with the walrus? I mean, she hallucinated a walrus, right?
Yes. So Lillian, therefore drunk, at the at the steering wheel or helm or tiller or whatever it's called, the bison's bucket or whatever it's called, the bison's wheel, bosun's. Yeah, she's driving the ship. She sees something she thinks is a walrus and crashes the ship. That's the story, isn't it?
Yeah, I imagine. I mean, I've got sympathy because I hallucinated a tennis court in the middle of Vassals Park in 1992, and there's definitely not one there. But she steered into a rock, or she hit another boat. Did we not hear what happened, or did I imagine all of that?
No, that we were told in. I think we would.
She gave the interview, and there was the cutting that Nancy, was it Nancy, the annoying Hun woman?
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, no idea. I mean, I have listened to it twice, and I've just sort of immediately. It's the different types of listening, isn't it? It's the you've got one kind of memory that's kind of cramming for an exam where you're laying it down for precisely 24 hours. All you need to do is it's like trying to remember a passcode to rush back to your computer, like a long digit to run, to go back to your computer or something. Then you've got kind of cherished memories that just spot weld themselves to your brain, and you've got this where you are not even, if it sticks to your brain, it's just pure coincidence or madness. Like I had made no effort to remember it whatsoever.
And what happens in cows stays in cows, apparently.
Yeah, no, God.
That's enough to get you fired from the veterinary practice, isn't it? There was a story, actually. I shouldn't go over that. I just remember a story from Thailand where there was a guy that was having a lot of fun with cows in a barn, and he ended up going to jail for it. But that's a whole other show.
That's not just Thailand. I mean, there was a guy in Newcastle about 20 years ago. I remember he was making sweet love with a goat, and a train broke down next to the allotments where it was happening. So,
okay. Was there a good pun headline for that?
I don't know, me so horny or something. I don't know. That linked together the two stories. That's Thailand and
yeah, it is a bit, isn't it?
So if you can believe it, we've just actually had to cut out an even worse story involving even worse stuff. So, Matthew, what other animals can we talk about?
Well, we could talk about Double Bill. Is it Double Bill, the druggy horse?
Oh, right. Yes. I mean, we've talked about all these preposterous things with Lillian and Justin, and we never even got to the first one.
And that was driving through most of the episode, wasn't it? I mean, as we said, how much did they get for the barn? Hundreds of thousands. They mentioned that Double Bill was worth hundreds of thousands. It was eventing. Was it dressage, or was it?
I think eventing's is the eventing the thing where they kind of jump around fields? I think
maybe show jumping. Maybe.
No, I think that's smaller fences in a smaller field.
Yeah. You're surprised me here because I thought you were slightly of horsey stock, Peter.
I am from the part of my family that might know about this stuff is a kind of sort of arriviste sort of part, but with the small amount of money that was made was immediately lost. So I don't think that lot got to hang around with the horsey set for very long.
No, I mean my dad's got his partner has horses, so yeah, I'm in a glass house there. But I'm just wondering what drives the price up of horses, because Lillian it was all about the aesthetic, wasn't it? I mean, the dappled coat, very handsome. His behaviour when he came out of the stable, but she was just relentless with Jakob. That was the only time I had some sympathy for Jakob, because he was kind of quite methodically explaining, well, it has to go like this, and these things take time. And she would keep, she would ping him over and over and over again, asking.
Joe Rogan, who you mentioned earlier, was doing lots of research and making lots of comments about the Dunning-Kruger effect when it came to him. So I would like to see some sort of research about psychological research about why you would never ever say to a plumber or an electrician, well, hurry up, mate, or oh, just a sec, have you thought about trying this? Or and yet a vet or a lawyer or someone else, you sort of feel completely emboldened to sort of say, well, maybe you should hurry up this incredibly expensive and monstrously complicated thing. And plumbing and electronics, there can be just the same level of complexity, but it's just a strange dynamic where how certain jobs be. And by the way, if any plumbers and electricians are listening and they think I've got this all wrong, maybe people do tell plumbers and electricians what to do. But it's just, in my observation, is people are very, very slow to tell tradesmen what to do.
Yeah, and I would take my hat off to them, because the last time I actually did some plumbing, it was fine, but it was basically the U-bend under the kitchen sink when I lived in Bristol, and I kept doing this thing where I was down there with the detached pipe, and every time I came up, my hands were wet, so I would run the tap to wash my hands and kept flooding the cupboard underneath, and I did that at least 5 times just through muscle memory.
Yeah, so you didn't need to send yourself out for tartan paint. You were already kind of, lampooning yourself on the job on site.
Exactly, and I was done by those pranks as well in my Saturday job when I was a kid.
There's a kind of profound sadness about when you really screw up on your own, and you don't there's not even someone to laugh in your face and kind of just at least kind of make it all a bit funny. You're just there with your screw up, a horrific spillage that ruins furniture, or you screw up some electrics or anything. Does this ring a bell at all? Right?
It does, but there is also it's tempered with that. It's balanced with that feeling of, I can probably sort this without anyone ever finding out what I've done.
No, I think I'd rather have someone laughing in my face, and I'd have companionship.
Would you? I mean, we used to have a patio door going out to the pool in Australia, and there was always a fly screen over when the patio door was open, just for temperature. And one time I just tried to walk through the plate glass door, and my body did this weird thing where I knew I'd walked into glass the first time, and then I tried to do it a second time. And my cousin just nearly wet herself watching. I had no idea why I did it.
It's those moments when real life, if someone acted it, the director would walk over and go, no, too much.
Yes.
Too much. Yeah. What the hell do you think you're doing? A double door walk? Come on.
I thought it was a very British thing to be doing in Australia. I remember once a client coming to visit an office that I was working in, and he was carrying a hot cup of coffee in a plastic cup, and this glass door slammed back in him, and he basically smashed hot coffee over his chest, and he laughed. I was like, that's the most British thing I've ever seen, because the guy's clearly in pain and possibly losing skin, but he's visiting another company and he just doesn't want to lose face.
I used to work on a boat, and this client came over, and it was flooding at the time, and she said, "Oh my God, how on earth do you guys cope with the floods?" And everyone was just looking at the floor, waiting who was going to sort of have the courage to sort of point out the blindingly obvious. We were absolutely fine. So, Matthew, the one thing I think we haven't talked about is Denise. Is she going to be a character staying around? I wanted to stay around. I liked her a lot. I actually thought she's maybe the most rounded character this week.
Yeah, absolutely. When she said to Jakob, "Do you even know what's going on with my kids?" I was screaming at the radio, going, "Yeah, her daughter's going to university," blah, blah. And he was like, "Yeah, he doesn't know, does he?" She was great, and I liked the way that she handed in a notice, where she said, I was going to drive my daughter to university that day and take that time off in lieu for working today, but that doesn't matter because the third point, I quit. And Jakob came crawling back to say that they'd had some unsatisfactory help in the form of Tracy. I like Tracy's kind of approach, which is, if you don't apologize, I'm going to burn the whole practice down.
Yeah, I did think there was one moment where, and it was obviously a little cheeky sort of scene ender, but where Jakob kind of said, and actually you might be missing the regular clients here, mightn't you? And I thought that was that did make me smile a little bit. So I'll give the Archers that they did make me smile once this week.
Yeah, he realised he'd up, didn't he? And he had to go back and to clear that up, but he was still very reticent. I don't even think it's on purpose, is it? He's just so socially awkward. And were you hinting earlier that maybe he's on some kind of spectrum?
The thing is, I know it's a very sensitive topic. I know people do people diagnose themselves with OCD and they say, "Oh, she's a bit on the spectrum," and all this sort of stuff. So these days I'm trying to be very slow for any of that sort of stuff. But that would be the colloquial phrase that people would use to sum up what I was trying to say. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I cringed a bit as I said it, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm not criticizing you, but I'm just acknowledging the fact that it might be something. I think it's one of those phrases that's probably going to evolve out over the next couple of years. I wouldn't be offended if someone said it, but I can understand how a lot of people who potentially have, children who do have Asperger's or do have autism or anything like that would be deeply offended by it. But yeah, I think there is something diagnosable with him.
I mean, I had a friend in Ireland who I had to be told by a mutual friend that it was a case of Asperger's because his directness would have shamed Keri.
Yeah,
he would just tell you stuff to your face about you, and you're like, "Oh, okay, that's a bit crushing."
Yeah,
but, and then immediately afterwards, just be absolutely lovely. And I was taken aside and just said, like, just roll with it. It's fine. I did like that moment where Jakob, speaking of Moose, said he couldn't imagine a more annoying companion than that dog. And I was like, well, you date Kate. You've not met her.
That is a serious plot hole, this idea that do you remember way back when Kate was losing her. I'm going to mix up a couple of plots here, so I apologize. But Kate, this is how I remember it. Kate was getting super cross because Jakob was saying, "Oh, you can't live here." I think this was the first time it happened. And then he then had to explain to her how much he adored her, and that, he couldn't understand why he liked her so much, but he did, even though she was so annoying, and then everything was fine, and then they loved each other, and then they made then they went away and had sex, but that was their kind of way of neatening it up. It's like, oh, it's implausible and ridiculous, but they just do love each other. But it's like, no, if Jakob can't even maintain a sort of healthy relationship with someone as professional and obviously capable as Denise, then how is he going home and even being able to put one foot in front of the other in the company of Kate? It just doesn't make any sense. Or is that what they're leading us up to? I don't know.
I think that's where they're leading us, don't they? I mean, the other thing I said, and I tweeted out this tonight it was me on the side who said Twitter tonight, everyone, so apologies if you didn't like it. But I think there were some pretty clunky Easter eggs for Alistair being lonely, didn't you as well? I think that's feeding in from Shula.
Well, he rejected that accusation from Tracy, didn't he? He was very offended by that.
Mm-hmm.
He was kind of like, no, I'm fine. I'm not lonely. But how could he not be?
Yeah, and I think they're following on from this Shula confession to try and bleed that into the story that maybe he's feeling a little bit downcast because of that.
Well, I think Alistair's a bit of a catch. He's now svelte-ish, where he's lost his flab because he's obviously he's a long distance runner now. He's still running because they referenced his shoes this week. He's got a very sexy job. It's professional, competent, well paid, and also a man, sensitive man working with animals. He's maybe he loses some points for living with his dad. I don't know, but he's got a good reason why. And actually, if you ever met his dad, you'd realise it is all quite healthy. And I think Alice is a bit of a catch. He should be snapped up.
I tell you what, I am getting pissed about: lack of Jim. Just hearing about Jim, through other people. Like, where is he? He should be. I know he's off in Scotland with his daughter, but not having that. I want Jim in the house, even if it is a massive scene when the Cicero mug gets smashed. But no, I know what you mean about Alistair. Yeah, he's one of the more likable characters, isn't he? He doesn't set the world alight, but he's particularly as an opposing force to the J-Man, Jakob, who's wrecking everyone's head this week.
He is if you need some tofu to sort of mop up the surrounding flavors, then Alistair does a good job. He's in there. But talking of people who everyone is sick of hearing about but not actually hearing from, Keri's away next week as well, isn't she?
She is. I think she's going to be. She's still in Mallorca next week. Have I got that right?
She's going to look like Magda from There's Something About Mary. All the time she comes back.
Is this where we're making up for lost time?
Well, yeah, it can't all be kind words.
You said that, Peter. I just laughed.
Well, I mean,
She's
she's basting herself in like her own weight in booze, and I assume that the animal population of Spain has sort of halved since she got there.
since she lit the barbecue.
Exactly, there's just kind of long trails of pigs and sheep being led towards the coast, so that Keri can feast every day.
Well, she did. She reliably informed me, because I alleged earlier that she was in Magaluf banging out Roxy Music's "More Than This" in a karaoke bar, and she assured me she'd had a glass of rosé at lunchtime and a small beer in the evening. So
Yeah.
she's pacing herself. Next week when it all goes postal.
Yeah, it's like running a marathon. You always have a little sort of a few days off to let your body rest before the big exertion.
I got some mates that run a bar in Magaluf, actually. Maybe I can hook her up.
Well, I mean, warn your mates.
No, they can handle it.
Well, the good news is at least Keri's got a week to calm down before she comes back and exacts retribution on us. So if someone wants to commiserate with Keri on having to share a podcast with such miserable ingrates, where would they do that, Matthew?
They would do it on Twitter at the Cider Shed Pod, which is where all these lovely people that follow us, they're very witty. They follow us on Twitter, Instagram. I took a little bit of a hiatus over the holidays, but that's at the Cider Shed Pod as well. So funny memes incoming. I can sense they are on their way. And on Facebook, we are the Cider Shed Podcast, and that's a group page. So all you have to do is just join the group and post away on there. I'll approve it unless it's something incredibly offensive, and even then it might get through.
And if you want to send us any recommendations, any hot gossip, I don't know why I said that, but maybe you do, maybe some hot gossip, then it's hello@thecidershed.com. And please review and rate us on Apple and all the other usual podcatchers. That's an annoying phrase, but anyway, so all the usual podcatchers. So thank you very much, Matthew. It's going to be you and me next week. Please. Do you know what? If it's this bad next week, I'm going to say we chuck in 10 minutes of Highlander chat.
Well, firstly, Peter, I don't think it's been that bad. I've had an absolute joyful.
No, not us.
50 minutes.
Not us,
the Archers.
Yeah, no.
Yes.
So
God, no. We're a joy. No, the Archers. Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Definitely throw in a bit of Highlander.
Yeah, if it's this bad next week, we're going to do Archers for 30 minutes. We're going to chuck in 10 minutes of Highlander because, at least I'll enjoy that.
Yeah, and if you're a fan of the movie Highlander, send us a little message. DM us on the Facebook, on the Instagram, on the Twitter, and we'd love to hear your thoughts on that, because me and Peter, we talk like pretty much every 17 minutes on WhatsApp about Highlander, don't we?
We should consider doing the pod extra that no one wants. It is Peter and Matthew talk Highlander, and Keri can go off and do her Roxy Music one on her own.
It can be like that DJ at the Exchange in Bristol who decided he was going to play Africa by Toto for 24 hours. We can just...
A fantastic song.
Yeah. My iPod once broke when I was coming home very loved up in Dublin, and the only song it could play was Africa over and over again. And it was just incredible. And I think I tweeted about it, and then I'm convinced that guy at the Exchange stole my idea.
It's an absolute cracker. I'll post something on. I'll add a link to the when I put the podcast up on Saturday. I'll add a link which is how Africa got to number one in New Zealand about 6 years ago.
Mm.
It's I enjoy it anyway.
Apparently, nearly left off the album as well.
Well, it's actually a very, very complex song. There's a lot of quite sort of interesting kind of key changes and kind of chord structures in there. But anyway.
Is Rosanna better though, because of the tempo changes?
Oh, Rosanna's an absolute. My little boy loves Rosanna. Our next door neighbour's called Rosanna, and so that gets played in the house very frequently.
Yeah, it's a tough one, isn't it? I think I'd have to go with Africa, but Rosanna's got it as well. Mm. I start doing that real 80s thumb click thing, swinging my forearms when Rosanna's on. That's a horrific image for anyone.
Like you doing a full Dexy's Midnight Runners and you're shirtless in your incredibly hot Porto apartment.
Yes, the fan will be going on as soon as this recording finishes.
Well, I mean, now that me and the listeners are fully aroused at that description, maybe we should just quietly sort of slide away.
Yes, crawl into bed and let us smother you like a warm blanket.
Oh God! All right. That was like, oh my God! That was like some kind of weird outtake from a sex line.
Sorry, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.